Well, good evening. Welcome to this live stream on the 29th of July, 2025. I don't know where the year's going either. This is Martin North here from Digital Finance Analytics. Great to see you on the show this evening, and thank you very much for spending some of your Tuesday evening with us. I have Adam Stokes teed up ready to come in just a second, and we're going to have a really interesting conversation tonight about crypto-related matters and how it interfaces with the broader economy and some of the other things that are going on at the moment. And just before I bring Adam in, let me just remind you that we don't provide specific financial or legal advice. Please play nice in the chat room, but feel free to throw your questions, comments, and issues in. If you'd like to get a question to Adam or myself, if you use @Walk the World, that'll see in my queue, and make sure I get that in the list. And I've also enabled Super Chat, which means if you want to get to your question top of the list, you can do that, or indeed make a contribution to what we do around here. Always greatly appreciated. We do this for satisfaction and information, not for profit. So it's always really appreciative of those who help to support us in what we do. Really is greatly appreciated. Right, let me bring Adam straight in. Adam, welcome back. How are you doing?
Martin, so good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks, but a lot going on. And look, there's so many things that we could spend time chatting around tonight. But I guess what I was going to try and do was to have a bit of a philosophical deep dive into some of the really interesting contentions that are going on at the moment, particularly with regard to the financial markets and the crypto story, because the crypto story has developed remarkably. And in fact, if you go back a few years and think about what the value of crypto was when we first started talking, it's a bit different now, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is, and just for a bit of fun, Martin, because we like to have a laugh on this channel. When you and I first met, Bitcoin has increased. Well, let's first go with gold. Gold has increased since we first met in about 2018, 2019. Gold's gone up 182.28%, 182%. And in that same time period, Bitcoin has gone up, what do we say, 3,500%. So, um, many people think it's just about price goes up. It's a consequence of what happens when you have a pure money, a hard, sound, neutral, immutable, borderless, censorship resistant money that is beating inflation well beyond what gold is doing. Of course, it's not this or that, where we get a little bit tribal here, perhaps, Martin, as some people say, well, no, it's only got to be gold, or it's only got to be a car, or it's only got to be a truck, or it's only a man, or it's only a woman. And I say, no, diversity is key. Decentralization is even more important. But if you are just focused on number go up, our journey has seen a 3,500% increase in Bitcoin with less than 200% in gold. However, I hold both.
Yeah, and asset spreads are quite useful. I should also remind everybody that crypto is unregulated, and therefore, when you actually are listening to anybody talking about crypto, do your own work. Don't just take what they say as gospel, because there are some people out there who have been spooking just a little. I think I'll put it not strong. Now, I did actually put a poll in the post tonight, and I basically asked people, and feel free, folks, to put your answers in. Is Bitcoin the best future for money and us, or the one among many money forms ahead, or will it be overtaken by the central bank digital currency, or is it a complete Ponzi scam? So be interested to see. I've got 38 votes at the moment, and at the moment, well, 42% think the best future for money is Bitcoin. How about that?
I think we've done very well in showing people the way. Look, the reality is, all banter aside, people are starting to understand that something's not right. Things are becoming more expensive. And I start the conversation tonight, Martin, with understanding that the natural state of the market is deflationary. The natural state of an economy is deflationary. Why? Because as technology gets better, as we start to work better with each other, we create more efficiency. And you say, well, hang on, if the natural state of the economy, or the natural state of a free market is deflationary, why is everything getting more expensive? And the answer to that is because we're not operating in a natural state of a free market. What we're acting in is, in fact, the opposite. when we start to unpack this, we realize that we actually haven't ever been completely free, because if you don't have money that's not messed with, we're not free. All of your labor, all of your effort is being tinkered with in the background. So why do we have this dichotomy at the moment? Why are things becoming so much more expensive? If technology gets better, roads get better, engines get better, everything's becoming more efficient, artificial intelligence, communicating as we are now without any middlemen with TV stations in the past. We're running our own TV network, if you will, in contrast. Email, we could go on with all the efficiencies that are in an economy. If everything is becoming more efficient, why is everything so much more expensive? And it's because the the counter to this is that when we operate in a debt-based economy, when money is born through, well, it's funny how we use the word credit or debt, because they can sometimes be interchangeable depending on what type side of the balance sheet you're standing on. But if money is printed through debt, created out of thin air, diluting everyone's holdings, we are not operating in this state of a free market. And once you start to unpack this a little bit, you say, well, hang on, maybe we're not in fact free. And many people are now moving not to Bitcoin because they say, yay, Bitcoin, let's get in low and get out high. It's because people understand that something's not right. How is it that we can get smarter? Things get better with technology, things move faster. And yet, my grandfather, as a real life example, as a blue collar worker, could raise 7 children and himself and look after his wife and buy a house and have a Holden in the driveway. Yet, my parents needed 2 people to achieve that with less kids. And in this day and age, you have 2 parents or 2 people working with no children and sometimes having 3 jobs just to keep the roof over their head. So we can see over this isn't just some made up thing. We're all feeling it. Our grandparents, one person could work, lots of kids, and have a house and a car. Our parents, depending what age we are, it was 2 people working and you could have less kids and a house and a car. Now, no one can afford kids. Both people are working 2 or 3 jobs and they still can't get into the property market. And the reason for that is money is broken. So long as we keep printing money out of thin air and it is linked to nothing and it steals everyone's purchasing power, whether you like me or not, whether you like Martin or not, whether you like Bitcoin or not, let's park that aside. Let's go to why is everything becoming more expensive? And it's because of inflation.
Right. And I think it's really interesting. I've got here, you might recognize this. My camera may
I
not.
remember one of those.
Yeah, remember one of those? Well, the
Yeah.
point is, this actually has some value, right? But today, if I wanted to use this, I would get a lot less than I got a year ago if I went and spent it in the shops, right? And if I took it back 5 years, I could buy a whole lot more. So there's something weird about the fact that over time, the value of this goes down. And when I think about inflation, that's what I actually think about. I think about this is worth less. So you need more of them to buy anything. And of course, that's true whether you're buying a property, whether you're buying shops, food in the shops, etc., etc. So I think that's pretty important to understand. And look, I was thinking about this in the context of a couple of recent events. The first one is this one. There was an article. It was actually an opinion piece in the Financial Times, right? And it was actually a piece that basically started saying, there's a crypto crisis coming, right? Why? Because JP Morgan Chase was looking at lending against clients' cryptocurrency holdings. And they went on to say, it's not stable assets. It's 4 times more volatile than major indices. And it's now becoming part of the real economy. And went on to talk about the Genius Act. And therefore, the pro-crypto legislation is likely to cause the next financial crisis, maybe fuel US political populism and unrest. And I thought, that's interesting. But then I thought a bit harder and thought, hang on a moment. If you think about money, now, the definition of money is, well, it's about medium of exchange, store of value, etc., all that sort of stuff. But money is also about control. And I was thinking about feudalism and the fact that years ago, you basically worked on the farm or whatever, and then you actually had to go and give something to the to the owner of the farm. And if you were lucky, you got a little bit back, right? And actually nothing has changed. So we have money today, but we're actually still within the same system. It's just that it's a bit more sophisticated now. But actually we are still having to work within the system of imposed money. That's imposed by the state. And effectively that also has the taxation element tacked on the back of it, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a really important observation that the money that we have and the money we've been living with for many years is part of state control. That's my first point. My second point is the central bank. Now, the central bank, of course, is ostensibly there to control inflation and to balance inflation and employment. But actually, no, the real purpose of the central bank is actually to ensure that the state is funded. And whatever they say about what they're there, that's actually what they're there for. So it's important to understand that the central bank and the state are absolutely part of the same thing, and it's part of the same construction. And when you start thinking about that and then overlay the next point, which is this: world debt has gone through the roof, right? It's rapidly risen since 1997, and it's 300 trillion plus. And then when you think about that and translate it into liquidity, so the global liquidity is actually chasing all the indices higher. And by the way, that's not just the West, it's also China as well. So if you look at the M1 in China, it's gone up significantly too. And what that tells you is that there is a whole lot more money in the system, liquidity blooming, and that is actually reducing the value of this day in, day out, right? That's the world we live in. And so when people look at the property prices and think, oh, we're wealthy. No. This has been devalued.
Well said. So in accounting terms, what is money? So in accounting terms, as you mentioned, money is a store of value, medium of account, and unit of exchange. In philosophical terms, money is a language. In labor terms, money is a store of energy or output or value. But if we look at arbitrary terms with humans interacting with one another, it's just an arbitrary form of us exchanging what I want with what you have. What happened is governments came in and they hijacked money. Money was never a function of government. Money was a function of humans interacting with one another. And throughout time, money has changed. Of course, we've had feathers and beads and shells and rocks and pieces of gold and diamonds and the barter economy, and money has evolved. And money is ultimately, if you ask a crypto goer, money is in fact a technology. Money is a technology where I can take my medium of exchange, unit of account, store of value, my language, my energy, my value, my output, my medium of swapping something for another, as in a barter economy or something. And we've just evolved this technology. Once you actually start to understand that money is a technology as we move forward, it can remove some of the emotion. When you take it a step further and you understand that money was never meant to be a function of government, but governments have hijacked money, and then they separated themselves from money to the extent where they say, well, we didn't print the money, the banks printed it. And of course, well, you and I come in and say, well, hang on, if I printed money, I go to jail. You, government, you come with men with guns and you say, Adam, you printed money, you're not allowed to do that. We're going to put you in jail. And I said, well, hang on a second. You just had the central bank print money. You had fractionally reserved money printed out of commercial banks. So you're all printing money. Why, if printing money is illegal, why am I going to jail and they're not going to jail? And then when I call you out for it and you say, well, we didn't print the money, they printed the money. And I said, well, if they, being the banks, if they printed the money, why aren't they going to jail? And once you actually start to understand this, you understand that money is broken. So we've just gone through all the definitions of money. And then we said, well, if money's broken and that $50 note you held up is losing its purchasing power, we then go to the word of inflation. The global economy broadly is financially illiterate, not because they're stupid, not because they're bad, not because they've done anything wrong, but it's because it's by design. If everyone understood that you're losing your purchasing power because someone at the top, a very few people at the top, whether you want to call it the banks, the governments, it's irrelevant. What's relevant is that someone is printing money. Now, of course, you have central banks and you have governments and you have the issuance of bonds. And this is where the lines become a bit blurry, but that's all by design. But ultimately, I'm not printing money. You're not printing money, but we are paying for the printing of money. Let's go to the word inflation, as we spoke about just before we started recording. We need to define what inflation is. So, as you know, one of my degrees is in economics, and in pure economic terms, inflation by definition in the science of economics is the inflation of the money supply. That's what inflation means. The secondary effect of inflating the money supply, printing money out of thin air linked to nothing, is the dilution of money. So that $50 note that you held up before, it loses its purchasing power. Just the same as if I have a glass of cordial or orange juice and I start pouring lots and lots of water into it, I'm diluting the power, the strength, the taste, the sugar of that energy, if you will. So now we understand that inflation by definition is the inflation of the money supply. Then we lose purchasing power because it's been diluted because someone printed the money, not me, not you, but the banks and not the governments because they say it was the banks and the banks say, well, we're just doing what the our government told us to do through the issuance of bonds. That's for another discussion.
Mm.
Ultimately, we don't get to print the money, but we have to pay for the printing of the money through the dilution of our purchasing power. Inflation in reality is theft because every single time they press print, they are stealing what you and I have done. They are stealing the energy, the value that we created in an economy, either through goods or services. It's irrelevant. We have worked, we have sold, we have done something to create a store of value. But that store of value has just been diluted by someone at the top, the very, very few at the top, not the 5%, not the 1%, not the 0.1%, but the 0.001%. That's where all the value is going to to them. They are stealing our purchasing power. So once you understand this, you say, okay, right. So money was never meant to be a function of government. Money is just a technology. They keep printing money. That's inflating the money supply. That's diluting our purchasing power. And by consequence, prices go up. A secondary effect of inflation is prices going up. But to the financially illiterate, which is the majority of the population, again, not because they're bad, not because they're stupid, but because they've been denied the education, they believe inflation is Colesworth, as in Coles and Woolworths and all these evil corporations. All these evil white men go to a cave and they all meet together and they say, right, at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, we're going to be really greedy, rich entrepreneurs and we're just going to jack up all the prices simultaneously. You ready? Ready, set, go. Boom. Now, of course, that's what's sold to everyone else. They're sold, hey, well, it's not our fault. It's Woolworth's fault. It's Coles' fault. It's Qantas's fault. It's the evil oil production's fault. It's the real estate market's fault. No, prices going up is a secondary effect of the inflation of the money supply. If you don't want prices to go up, you need to stop inflating money. Now, it goes back to right to what I said at the beginning of the interview, Martin. The natural state of a free market is deflation. Why? Because if the money is set, the money supply is set, we can still divide it up into lots of pieces. Division is not expansion. Division is division. Expansion is what we're doing with fiat. As we get more efficient, which we are doing with technology, artificial intelligence, internal combustion engine, electric engines, aeroplanes, take your pick of technology, the natural state of the free market is that things become cheaper. And because things are not becoming cheaper, they're becoming more expensive for the reasons I described. The reality is, Martin, and viewers out there, you are not free. We have never been free because so long as someone can constantly steal your money, deny your education, steal your value and you have no control over it, you're just a slave. You are just a slave to someone printing money, stealing from you every single day. They print this money. And of course, they throw political leaders at it and saying, well, it was Trump, it was Putin, it was this, it was that. If we tweak this, it's land supply. All of these have parts of it, particularly when it comes to the availability of land in the housing market in Australia. That's for a different discussion. But the layer one to all of it is money. The layer zero to life is energy. The layer one to everything that we do, whether you want to support your church or your family or your footy team or yourself or whatever, you need money. That's the layer one. What you do with that money is up to you. But if the layer one, money, is broken, it trickles throughout society. And I'll finish with this analogy. If you're a farmer and your soil is contaminated, it doesn't matter what farmhouses you put on there, what tractors you bring in, what cats you get in to catch the mice. If your soil is contaminated, your farm is screwed. And the same is true with any economy. If your money is contaminated, which it is, if your money is corrupt and broken, your economy will break. And that is why, no matter what we do, no matter what economic lever we pull, we'll put interest rates up, we'll put interest rates down. We're going to tax more, we're going to tax less, although tax is only going in one direction now. Governments are broke. because it's all a Ponzi scheme. That chart that you brought up before, the chart you brought up before, where everyone's going up into debt. The money supply is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The value isn't getting bigger. The purchasing power isn't getting bigger. The debt is getting bigger because money is born through debt. Money is born at the top of this Ponzi scheme, not Bitcoin, but fiat being the Ponzi scheme, through someone writing an IOU, aka a treasury or a bond, and saying, I owe you $50 billion. And so then they go to another entity, whether you want to call it the Fed, the RBA, and they say, hey, can you lend me money that doesn't exist? And this entity goes, yeah, the money doesn't exist. We're going to print it out of thin air, physically or digitally. That's irrelevant. And we're going to lend it to you. And then you have to pay me back money that never existed in the first place. And you have to pay interest on top of that money. And the government in power goes, well, everyone else has been doing this. And I'm only here for 4 years. And I've got a welfare state to feed and roads to build and debt to pay. So I don't care. Everyone else has been doing. Sure, here's your IOU. Give me, it doesn't matter what the number is, a million, a billion, a trillion. It doesn't matter. They print the money out of thin air. The debt is passed to the government. The government doesn't produce anything except regulation and more debt and more laws. And ultimately, you and I, the people, we have to pay for that debt. You say, well, how are you going to pay for that debt? Well, they steal the money from us first through taxes, and I've got no issue with taxes as long as they're done proportionately and for the right things. But taxes aren't enough to pay the debt. So how do they make up the difference? Well, then they start fining people in the local and state governments. You can see they're doing a lot of speed cameras, a lot of parking fines, and that's not enough money. So what do? Well, then they start jacking up rates, which is another form of tax, and that's not enough. So then what do? Then they print money. And printing money, inflation, ultimately it comes down to this. Inflation is merely an invisible and brutal tax that you have no control over. Governments is just another layer of tax where they print more money, stealing your value to pay off whatever they're using that money for at the time, and you have no say in it. So it all comes around to this, Martin. What is the antithesis to this? What is the opposite to an unlimited money that someone at the top can print? Now, people have got lots of beliefs about, it's going to be gold, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. We'll park that aside for a second. When you understand what's the issue with inflation, well, okay, someone's printing money out of thin air. Okay, if you've got an unlimited money that's printed without limit, linked to nothing, what's the opposite to that? Well, the opposite to that is a set supply of money that is very difficult to obtain, but is not controlled by a central body and has a hard cap. People get a bit upset with the hard cap and they say, well, no, we need lots of money, otherwise there's not going to be enough to go around. No, you can divide it. If I have a piece of cake as a cake, and if I've got one cake that I haven't cut into pieces, well, only one person can have that cake. But if I cut it into 10 pieces, 10 people can have a piece of that cake. It's still one cake, but there's 10 pieces. But if I can cut that cake into 50 trillion pieces, which you can digitally, 100 trillion pieces, everyone gets a little piece of that cake. And you say, but then the cake is not worth that much. And say, yeah, it's worth a lot because there's only one cake that exists and everyone's interacting in this. And the harder you work, the more pieces of the cake that you can get, as opposed to the opposite that we have now. The harder you work, they're just printing out of thin air all of these imaginary cakes, diluting our purchasing power. No matter how hard you work, your cake in this analogy becomes worth less and less and less and less and less because someone over there just keeps printing more and more and more.
And that's the point. And this more and more and more, this is the M2 for the US money supply. And you can see that it's now gone up to 22 trillion, right? And interestingly, of course, the central bank in the US did quantitative easing and then has done quantitative tightening, but the money supply is still rising. So the Treasury, of course, is issuing a lot more. And the other thing, there's a multiplier effect too, which is important to understand that this is the US debt margin. And you can see there that what this means effectively is margin debt leverage, in other words, is becoming higher and higher. So you've got this debt reinforcing process going on as well. So effectively, as the money supply increases, because effectively the central banks and the governments are actually in hot with each other and effectively are printing more and more money, and then you've got the private capital built around it, and through the leverage and the ability to be able to effectively margin apply, what you can do is to multiply that even more. And so the multiple effect is that the value of your $50 is going down and down and down and down. And interestingly, of course, there is this 2% or 2 to 3% target that the central banks have. So they've actually wired in to their base assumption that value will always go down. It's wired into the way that now, actually, of course, the real inflation rate is a whole lot higher than the 2 to 2.5% or whatever it is, right? Because, particularly if you look at food, for example, at the moment. So for ordinary people, they're sort of seeing the ever shrinking dollar, and their pay has not kept up with it. So they're actually getting poorer in real terms. And that's one of the reasons why you've got this multiplier effect where you've now got to have two incomes rather than one income going to be able to buy a house. And so the treadwheel gets effectively tighter and tighter, and people have to run harder and harder and faster and work multiple jobs and all those things. It's a consequence of this amazing, as you call it, the level one, amazing problem that we've got, which is that the money supply continues to grow and nobody wants to control it. Nobody's willing to control it. And the social consequences follow from that, don't they?
Yeah, and what's interesting is that the solution that we have at the moment doesn't require protests. It doesn't require war. It doesn't require violence. It doesn't require anything. You just have an option. You say, right, and I give this to everyone out there. Do you want to hold a money? Don't worry about earning a money for now because that can be controversial. People say, well, how do I earn this? How do I earn gold? How do I earn Bitcoin? How do I earn anything? Now, there's ways to do that. For example, if you employ me, you pay me in Bitcoin. Why? Because that's what I choose. But some people want to be paid in beer and some people want to be paid in this and that. And certainly not dodging tax. If I get paid in Bitcoin, which I do, I have to pay tax on that Bitcoin to the value of what the Bitcoin's worth on the day to the ATO. So it's not dodging tax. And so, well, why, Adam, would you want to be held in Bitcoin? And it comes down to this. Do you want to hold a money that constantly loses its purchasing power? And if you do, earn dollars and hold dollars, that's your call. Do you want to hold a money that holds your purchasing power? That means it doesn't get stronger or weaker, it just sort of stays flat. And if you want to do that, get gold, that's fine. Or do you want to live on a money that constantly increases its purchasing power? And if you want to do that one, you do Bitcoin. Now, here's where I get excited about this. I'm saying to the people out there, I'm saying, you choose what you want to do. I'm not trying to push anything onto you. I'm just saying, this is the rules of the universe. This is the reality that we live in. If you save in fiat dollars, you become poorer. Fact, not an opinion, not a thought, not a thesis. It is a reality. You are becoming poorer because you are losing your purchasing power because they keep printing this worthless crap. If you want to maintain your purchasing power, go to gold. But then you have a demurrage cost where it's slow and it's difficult, and I can't use it at the shops. I can't use it online. But if you want to increase your purchasing power and have the ability to use it like fiat, where people say no one accepts Bitcoin, everyone accepts Bitcoin. I use Bitcoin anywhere and everywhere. When I buy a cup of coffee and I go blip on the terminal, it's linked to one of my Bitcoin wallets and it does an immediate conversion, the same as if I'm in America and I use my Australian dollar credit card. There's no shops in America that accept the Australian dollar. But when I go blip on the terminal, there's an immediate conversion in the background that immediately swaps my Australian dollar to the American dollar and away I go. So what we want to do here as we move forward peacefully is say, look, you can opt out of this system. If you stay in fiat, you're going to become poorer. But if you move to Bitcoin, you're going to become richer. And when I say richer, I don't mean, yeah, look at me, I got a Lambo, I bought a new house. It's just like, no. Things become cheaper when you save and work in a scarce money. Whether you like what the money's called or you don't like the logo or whatever, that's completely irrelevant because Bitcoin has no company, no CEO, no board of directors, and it has no feelings and it has no opinion. It's just a mathematical code, the purest language in the history of humanity, mathematics. And it just says, right, if you want to opt into this hard, scarce, open, immutable, borderless, censorship-resistant money that anyone can use and no one can control, you're welcome. I don't care if you're gay, straight, black, white, young, old, Australian, American, it's irrelevant. It's completely neutral, which is the purest form of money. The other thing you must consider is that one of my clients, actually a few of my clients have told me about this, when they want to use their money that they have in their bank account, wink, and they want to come onto a crypto exchange, the banks stop them from using their money in the way they want to. And they say, well, we're here to protect you. And it's like, well, hang on a second, bank. If you're here to protect me, Why is it that I can go to a casino at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday morning where they're selling alcohol, but you don't stop me spending my money there? Why is it that you enable me to go on the Australian Stock Exchange and invest in penny stocks, which go to zero? You don't protect me there. Why is it that I can put my money into junk food that hurts me or cigarettes or alcohol? You don't protect me there. But then when I want to go into the best performing asset in the history of humanity, the best performing asset that we've ever seen ever, then you want to protect me. Then it's like, oh no, now we want to stop you from spending your money. We're going to block your money. And you say, hang on a second, this is my money. I want to use my money the way I want to. And the banks, who you didn't vote for, in reality, you're their customer. And in reality, they're serving you, in theory, anyway. And these people, these institutions, these corporations, these non-elected, non-government bodies, they're not your parents, they're not your wife, they're not your husband. They say, no, Johnny, you can't spend your money the way you want to. And this is another layer of Bitcoin. Another layer of Bitcoin is there is no bank to stop you spending your money the way you want to. This is what we talk about censorship resistant. No one can censor your ability to spend your money. And this also links onto the word freedom. I told you before that none of us are free because we haven't been operating in a free market. A free market, the natural state of a free market is deflationary. We are in an inflationary market, which is the opposite to a natural state of a free market. But even if you don't want to look at inflation, when you want to look at the ability of how you spend your money on what you want to spend your money in, why is it that some bank in Sydney can ring up and say, no, no, we're stopping you spending your money the way you want to on your items. We're going to debank you. We're going to close your accounts. And this is before we even talk about bail-in and bail-out laws and fees and interest rates. It is just an absolute crime against the people. Left, right, male, female, gay, straight, young, old. It's a crime against humanity that these centralized corporations that we never voted for can steal and dilute our money. It is an absolute crime. And of course, to end this rant with a point that really frustrates all of us, when they print too much money, but essentially when they stole too much of your money, here's where it gets really terrifying. So they steal your money by diluting it. How? They print more money. So what they've done is they've debased your money, which is the same as clipping a little piece of your gold off. It's the same as diluting your gold, same as stealing a little bit of your purchasing power. Whichever way you want to look at it, every time they print, they are stealing from you. So they're making lots of money from stealing from you. But here's the thing, Martin. When the banks have stolen too much money, they're like, oh, we've stolen too much money, as in the inflation is now too hot. So to fix this, we're now going to punish the people. Just saying it is so absurd, but it's an absolute fact. Once they've stolen too much money, inflation's too hot, and they say, right, we've stolen too much money from the people, inflation's too hot. So to fix this, we're going to punish the people by putting interest rates up. Hey everyone, sorry, the economy's too hot, inflation's getting too hot. So what we're going to do, because everything's too expensive, what we're going to do is make the most important thing in your life, your home, we're going to make that even more expensive. In fact, you know what? We're going to double it. All of you people that were paying $2,000 a month on your mortgage, because we stole too much of your money through inflation, through printing too much money, we're going to fix this by now doubling what you owe us by going from 2% to 4%, 3% to 6%. Instead of giving us $2,000 a month, you're now going to give us $3,000 to $4,000 a month. And the whole world goes, okay, I guess I bought too much coffee. I'm a naughty boy. I shouldn't have gone on that holiday. I shouldn't have bought that car. I shouldn't have created these jobs. I shouldn't have employed these people. Okay, Big Daddy government. Okay, Big Daddy banks. It must be my fault. Now the interest rates go up. And once you actually start to understand that, you say, oh my God, what are we doing? What the hell are we doing? They steal our money through printing it and diluting it. And then when they steal too much, they go, righto, double the interest rates. And then you say, well, they're doing that, Adam, to cool down inflation. And we talk about inflation. So in macroeconomic terms, the natural rate of inflation is, as you mentioned, Martin, about 2%. It's an arbitrary number that was made by a New Zealand of all places. Nothing against our New Zealand brothers and sisters out there, but this natural rate of inflation that I was taught back in uni. I'm like, oh, okay, well, the natural rate of inflation must be good because it's got the word natural, and anything that says natural must be good. It's got to be good. But then you say, well, hang on a second, why is there any inflation? because all inflation is the theft of your purchasing power. It's a dilution of what you have. So when the natural rate of inflation goes too high, and they report another lie to you through CPI, Consumer Price Index, which should really be core inflation, but Consumer Price Index, of course, as you understand, is a basket of goods, and they say, right, how much more expensive did everything come this quarter, as an example? And they say, well, oh, food went up a fair bit, so we better not put that in the basket. But Netflix didn't go up, so we'll put that in the CPI basket. And mobile phone plans, they didn't go up too much, so we'll put that in the CPI basket. And fuel didn't go up too much, so we're going to put that in the CPI basket. And then a man in a suit comes forward and says, well done, everyone. Inflation this quarter was only 2%.
Mm.
And you say, well, hang on a second. Why is bread twice as expensive? And why is my home, what that used to be $2,000 a month, is now $4,000 a month? You're telling me that things are only 2% more expensive? I'm now paying double for my home, double for my bread, double for my food, double for my drinks. And you're saying it's only gone up 2%. And of course, because it's not measuring core inflation. So that's yet another lie. But ultimately, the most expensive thing that most of us have is a house. And they don't include your rent going up, your property going up, as in your mortgage payments going up. And to all of you people out there who say, it doesn't affect me, I don't have a home loan, it absolutely affects you. Your landlord is not an evil person. There may be evil landlords out there, but ultimately they're just investors trying to get ahead because that's what they were sold through fractional reserve lending. They now have to pay double to the bank. And they need to get that money from somewhere. And the corporations, the media will say, oh, well, the landlord should pay for that. Why should the landlord pay that? They're not evil people. They're just investors. We've been told to invest. So here's the thing. They say, right, we stole too much money through inflation. So now we're going to fix it by taking even more money through interest rates. And they say, we need to do this because we need to get money out of the economy. There's too much money sloshing around the economy. But here's the thing, Martin, when the banks printed too much money and then the money supply got too big, inflation got too high, everyone's purchasing power diluted. So then they punish us by putting the interest rates up. And so now everyone goes, all right, bank overlords, we're really sorry that it was our fault. We spent too much money. Here you go. Here's double what we were paying. The same house. It's not in a different location. Doesn't have an extra bedroom. There's not an extra bathroom. I don't have an extra view. It hasn't been repainted. I'm now just going to pay you double of what I was paying before because I bought too much coffee, as the media man told me. What do they do with that money, Martin? If they're really removing it from the economy, why doesn't the treasurer and the prime minister, figuratively or literally, go to a big field and say, right, we're sorry, Australia, we printed too much money, although we blame you for spending too much money. We're going to take $4 trillion. I'll make up a number here. This is all the money we need to reduce inflation, because what's inflation? Inflation is the inflation of the money supply. They get a big 44-gallon drum of petrol and they pour it all over the fuel. And there's a ceremony where the treasurer goes with a match and goes, woof. And there's a big puff of figurative or literal flame and smoke that burns all of that excess money. Congratulations, everyone. We've reduced inflation. We've reduced the money supply. They don't do that, Martin. Where does the money go? The money goes to the banks. So the money was printed out of thin air in the first place, inflated too high. Then when it was too high, they stole it from you through higher interest rates. Then you gave it back to the bank. And what did the bank do with it? Now, this is all leading into, I know this is a long rant, but this leads into, what do we do with all of this liquidity? Because the money supply that you showed before is this liquidity that's sloshing around in the economy. It's too much liquidity. It's reduced our purchasing power, and it's made crap houses, $1 million. Okay. In comes Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not one thing, it's many things. One of the many things that Bitcoin is, it's a sponge. It soaks up all of this liquidity, but it doesn't soak it up by competing with the housing market. It doesn't soak it up by competing with the food industry or the aeroplane industry or the car industry. It soaks up all of this liquidity. Now we look at the United States. Bitcoin's going up, not as a projection, but as a matter of policy. You don't have to like me, you don't have to like Bitcoin, and you don't have to like Trump, but you must look at the policy. What are they doing in America right now? They have a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Donald Trump, like him or hate him, he and his family are buying a crap load of Bitcoin. The treasurer is buying a crap load of Bitcoin. BlackRock is buying a crapload of Bitcoin. Banks, banks are buying a crapload of Bitcoin. Why? Because it's now moving to the point that the policy is we need to keep the money printers going brr, but we need to soak up some of this liquidity, but we don't want to soak up the liquidity in the property market, the car market, the food market, the hotel market, the tourist market. What can soak up this liquidity? Now, gold can soak up so much, but gold, we don't know what the supply is. Bitcoin is now going to start soaking up some of this liquidity. Bitcoin is more than a store of value, medium of exchange, and a unit of account. It's more than borderless, censorship resistant, neutral, open money that everyone can be part of, no one can control. It's now also the sponge, the metaphoric fiscal sponge that's going to soak up a lot of this excess liquidity that you just showed without inflating the prices of other things. Bitcoin's going to $1 million. No problem at all. No problem. And you know what happens when it goes to 1 million, Martin? It's then going to $10 million. And then it's going to $20 million. Why? Because so long as fiat has an infinite bottom, as in its purchasing power keeps going down and down and down, the seesaw effect is Bitcoin has an infinite top.
Now, there's a lot to unpack there, but I just want to go back to a film, The Matrix. Do you remember The Matrix?
Absolutely.
I think that's a very, very important film because what it talks about is how you see the world, right? And basically, the whole thesis of The Matrix was that you've got a lot of people who are in their little world, plugged into. They're actually powering the system as it was. They don't realize they're doing it because they're living within their little world. And then, of course, people started to think about, well, hang on a moment, this is a bit weird. And they started to break out and, the blue pill, red pill sort of story. Now, I actually think The Matrix is a really interesting parable because from a philosopher's point of view, I like to stand back and think about, well, how do things work? And, what is working, what isn't working? And why do they work the way they work, right? And so when you start asking the why question of the way that the current money system works, you end up with some really quite astonishingly amazing answers, which is, we've just been discussing them quite recently, the last half an hour or so, that effectively money is actually there for control. The supply of money is ad infinitum increasing. And the more it increases, governments can mess around with it and then blame you for it later. And on the inflation issue, of course, there was a policy change some years ago to exclude the cost of housing from the inflation calculation. And if you actually were to run the calculation based on the old way of measuring inflation years ago, guess where inflation would be? It would be a whole lot higher than it currently is, which tells you something quite important. But when you come to sort of think about the crypto universe, I'm going to put this slide up. So where we are, we're about 4 trillion in total crypto market cap at the moment, right? And you can see how it's been rising recently. Just by way of comparison, by the way, if you look at Nvidia has a market cap of 4.31 trillion at the moment. That's just an interesting observation as the relativities of the whole crypto market relative to Nvidia, which I find interesting. Oh, and by the way, just for completeness, if you look at the mixture, you can see that 60% is Bitcoin. This is the big bit below, and then you've got some of the other coins there. So there's an interesting question that came in a little while ago from Jason, and I just want to throw this at you now because it sort of leads quite nicely from what you've been saying. And this is, in the current status quo, doesn't someone converting fiat to crypto potentially dilute the fiat also and have the same effect as money printing, in your opinion? Which is another way of asking the question, what is the relationship between the growth in crypto? Because as you pile more real money, as you say, the sponge into crypto, what's that mechanism actually doing?
Let me just shout out to Jason and well done to Jason for coming over to my channel as well. He said, let me read the question again. The world in current status quo, doesn't someone converting fiat to crypto potentially dilute the fiat and have the same effect as money printing, in your opinion? No, because, I think I understand the question because you're saying if I take this money, this unlimited money, and I put it into something else, does that dilute the money? No. So if we're talking about dollars, if I put, let's go with something that we understand, property. If I buy property, am I diluting the money supply? No, what I'm actually doing is I'm taking some of that money and I'm putting it into the property market. And this is what I'm talking about gold being a sponge. It's actually doing the opposite. It's a great question, Jason, and it's actually doing the exact opposite of what you're thinking there. Because as I told you, Bitcoin is now a sponge. It's soaking up some of this over diluted money. It's saying, hey, we've printed too much money. Where are we going to put it? Well, if we put it into the property market, hey, well done. We've taken money out of the circulating supply of fiat. But now what's happening that the property houses are getting so expensive that no one can buy a house. And this is where the US government is now making the distinction. The Bitcoin Strategic Reserve wasn't just to get votes. Trump buying Bitcoin and the treasurer percent buying Bitcoin isn't just about, hey, I want to get rich. It's like, oh, we need to soak up some of this liquidity. So it's actually the complete opposite of what you're suggesting there, Jason. If we start putting Bitcoin, fiat into Bitcoin. Now, there are 2 million different cryptocurrencies. Let's just stick with Bitcoin for now. The number one, 60% market dominance, the sixth biggest market cap on planet Earth, bigger than silver, bigger than Google, bigger than Meta Platforms, bigger than any oil company, bigger than Tesla, bigger than Berkshire Hathaway, the sixth biggest market cap on planet Earth, and it's only 16 years old, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. And by the way, it's been the fifth biggest market cap last week when it flipped Amazon. So we're going for number one. And what it's doing is it's soaking up some of this liquidity. And now it's understood by governments to not dilute the money supply, but soak up some of the money supply to, in fact, absorb some of the excessive money printing to shift it into something that's not competing with NVIDIA, not competing with the housing market, not competing with any of that. And I've only made this distinction recently. Now, I've been studying Bitcoin. I'm nearly up to 6,000 hours of studying Bitcoin on top of an economics degree, on top of running this channel, on top of the discussions, on top of doing many things. But after nearly 6,000 hours of studying Bitcoin, you think, oh, I know what Bitcoin is like. No, no, I'm only just starting learning. And I give that to the viewers out there because if you've done 1 hour in Bitcoin and you say, I know what Bitcoin is, I respectfully say, you have no idea what Bitcoin is. Because I'm telling you, after nearly 6,000 hours in Bitcoin doing this full time, I'm still learning what Bitcoin is. And now governments are starting to understand what Bitcoin is. And you know what? As a society, as humanity, collectively, we're starting to understand, oh, this is what this technology can do. Because if we go back a step further, most of us still don't even know what money is. So it's a long way of saying, no, Jason, great question. It's the opposite of that. It's not diluting fiat. It's, in fact, undiluting. What's the opposite of dilution? Concentrating fiat because it's taking that excess liquidity out and putting it into a neutral money of Bitcoin.
And there's a lovely follow-up question here, which came in from Antonio. By buying Bitcoin, are you promoting the fiat system as stable coins are propping up the system? So that takes us into the promotion of stable coin. That's the US's recent announcement. So what's the connection then between the Bitcoin universe, stable coins, and the fiat system?
Mikhail, great question there, but you've merged two completely different things here. So I'll read the question again and I'll make the separation. It says, by buying BTC, Bitcoin, are you promoting the fiat system as stable coins are propping up the system? No, it's the opposite. When you're swapping fiat for Bitcoin, you're not propping up fiat, you're exiting fiat. So you've got the sinking ship of fiat, which is going to the bottom of the ocean, and you have the life raft of Bitcoin, and it says, who wants to get on? And when you say, you know what, I'm not staying on the sinking ship of fiat, I'm out of here, I'm going onto the life raft of Bitcoin. See you later. So you're not propping up the sinking ship of fiat in any means. You're stepping off that ship and going to the life raft, the safe haven of Bitcoin. Okay, now we move on to stable coins. You've got Bitcoin, you've got altcoins, and you've got stable coins. You really have three areas to the market now. Now, of course, within altcoins, you've got smart coins and meme coins and artificial intelligence coins and metaverse coins, and there's many different subsectors to altcoins. And if that's confusing to people, so well, just think of shares. You've got tech shares, you've got oil shares, and I don't know, business shares and bank shares, and there's all these different shares, these different industries within business, but they're all shares. Now we go over to crypto, you've got all these different types of cryptos, but you've got Bitcoin, which is in many ways, it's more than one thing, but to keep it simple, it's a digital gold. You've got Ethereum, which is the digital oil. And then you've got these all these other altcoins, some which were just a game, which is like meme coins, which is literally a picture of a dog with a hat on his head, and the free market likes it, and people get upset by meme coins. And I say, no, it's a free market. Do not get angry at the free market. Celebrate the free market. You know, if you want to buy into meme coins, go for it. If you don't want to, also go for it. It's about freedom. You can choose to be in or out. Whereas with fiat, if there's no alternative, you don't have a choice. You have to be trapped into this. Okay, so now we move into stable coins. What's a stable coin? A stable coin, I'll do a quick history of the stable coin so we understand how they were born, if you will, and what they've evolved to. So in the olden days, when I say olden days, I mean like 10 years ago, less than 10 years ago, what people were doing as traders, they say, right, I'm using Binance and CoinSpot and Bybit. These are crypto exchanges. And they say, right, I just want to get off this exchange and I want to go over from CoinSpot, as an example, over to Binance because Binance has some coins that I want over there and maybe some lower, tighter spreads or some service that I want over there. Same as when you go to a shopping center, you're in Woolworths and now you want to go to a bakery and now you want to go to a toy shop and now you want to go to a shoe shop. You're just going to a different shop. So stable coins were created firstly by Tether. And the reason why they're done in the founder's own words is because he realized that there was a market where people wanted to move from one exchange to another, but they wanted to maintain their purchasing power. They wanted to go from Binance to CoinSpot or to Bybit or whatever exchange you want and somehow move the value without going into fiat. They didn't want to sell their Bitcoin and go into the dollar and then go back into and buy Bitcoin on another site. What they wanted to do was just say, right, I'm out of my position by trading moves in Binance and I now want to go over to CoinSpot. I'm going to go into a stable coin. That's how stable coins were born. But then the power of cryptocurrencies and decentralization and the ability for everyone to have wallets, it's like, well, hang on a second, because this stable coin is pegged to a dollar. That is, for every one stable coin in Tether I've got, $1 is worth $1. I don't have to deal with price fluctuations. I don't have to deal with the prices going up and down. I can just move it from this exchange to that exchange. But then everyone realized it's like, well, hang on a second, maybe I can use this dollar to buy stuff with. And as an example, when I'm doing international trade now, when I'm dealing with people overseas, I don't use the Swift network. Oh my God, the Swift network is caveman stuff. The Swift network is literally like me, the equivalent of me pulling out a quill if I want to write a letter, dipping it in ink, writing a letter, getting a wax stamp, and putting it on a sailing ship to go over to Mother England and hope to God that it gets there and is not blocked, stopped, seized, or sunk along the way. That's what the Swift network is in comparison to stablecoins. When I send money from me to you, I don't I don't use a bank. My God, why would I use a bank? I use a stable coin. Why? Because I can send it instantly. I don't have to worry about 3 days. I don't have to worry about exchange rates. I don't have to worry about permissions. I don't have to worry about bit codes and Swift codes and addresses and permissions and reasons and justifications. Just as I can text you a message or text you a file or text you an image or whatever you want, I can now text you money. So stable coins went from, hey, instead of just going from an exchange to this exchange, and also I missed a part there. And the other thing that we use for stable coins is that when you're buying Bitcoin and selling Bitcoin and buying Ethereum and selling Ethereum and trading in and out of your position for the traders, because remember, crypto is many things, as Bitcoin is many things, instead of selling out of your Bitcoin position back into dirty, old, analog, corrupt fiat, I could just stay in the digital land, the crypto land, and just go from Bitcoin to Tether, to Ethereum to Tether, to XRP to Tether. So you could bounce back in and out of your position very quickly without any friction, without any permission, with maximum speed, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The next part is as I just described, it's like, well, hang on a second. Now I can pay bills to anywhere in the world without using a bank, without worrying about 3 business days, without worrying about exchange rates, without worrying about the bloody fees or the Swift code or all of those codes. I can just text money very quickly. So now the world discovered this great utility for stablecoins. Now, then it evolved to something else. It's all moving so quickly. People like in Venezuela, as an example, they didn't want to hold a Venezuelan bolivar. Why? Because it keeps hyperinflating into infinity. They said, well, the US dollar is still a fiat and it's still losing its purchasing power, but it's not losing its purchasing power anywhere near the rate as the Venezuelan bolivar. So what I'll do is I'm just going to have a wallet on my phone. And as an example, all around the world, people like the US dollar, even though it's losing purchasing power, but it's the currency that's losing the least amount of purchasing power to an extent. You could compare it, but it's a universal currency that people could use around the world very quickly. Okay. Then we move to the next thing. So Tether. I was concerned, as there's many stable coins, but we use Tether as an example because it's the biggest. Tether, with the code of USDT, was sitting on billions upon billions upon billions upon billions of dollars of US dollars. Why? Because the deal was you give Tether $1 and Tether would give you a stable coin in return. And the market loved this. And at first, I was very worried about Tether. I'm like, hang on, this is a scam. They're just printing money out of thin air. But Tether came forward and said, audit us. Let's do the audits. And everyone did. They came forward and they audited it. And Tether could prove that they had the dollar to back their stablecoin. And I'm the first to admit I was very wary of this when stable coins first came in around 2016-ish. I'd have to go back, but I can remember making videos going, this is horrible. You know, they're printing money out of thin air. But no, the audits, the transparency, the open, the neutrality, the openness of all of it proved that no, Tether, in fact, had this huge holdings of US dollars. Okay, now where do we go? Now we go over to the United States, where the United States, where is money born? Money is born through the issuance of bonds, through treasuries. The treasury goes, hey, we need some money. So they write an IOU, which is called a bond or a treasury, and they go to the free market and they say, who wants to buy this IOU? And the market goes, well, why am I going to buy your bond? What do I get in return? And America goes, well, look, we'll do the 10 year as an example. The 10 year at the moment is about 4.3%. I've got it up, but I'll keep talking. So America goes, we'll give you this IOU, free market, you give us $1 million as an example, and in return, what we'll give you is we'll give you 4.3% per annum on that $1 million. And at the end of the 10 years, we'll give you back your $10 million. And the free market for many years was like, hey, that's a pretty good deal. America is very strong. America is very powerful. They've got a AAA rating. We love America. They've got the best currency in the world. I'll do that. So for many years, money was born through and it still is born this way, but the Treasury would print an IOU, a bond. It would go to the free market. The free market would say, yeah, I'll buy that bond. I like your 4.3% over 10 years. And after 10 years, you give me back my money. Now, you've got 2 years and 5 years and 10 years, but just as an example, we'll go with the 10 year. Recently, Martin, the United States went to the free market and they said, right, we're doing another bond sale. Who wants to buy these bonds? And no one turned up. The free market said, uh-uh, we don't like your instability, America. We don't like your downgrade of your credit rating. We don't like your hyperinflation. We don't like your conflict within yourselves. You're trying to kill your own president. You've got lots of conflict. You're printing more money. We have alternatives. We're more financially literate. We've got Bitcoin. We've got gold. We've got better options. We're not buying your treasuries. We're not going to buy them. So what happened? The Fed stepped in and the Fed said, all right, we'll buy them for you. So what happened? The Fed printed money out of thin air and gave money to itself. Now, the Fed's a bit weird because it's neither a federal entity nor has reserves of anything. But one branch of government, which isn't really the Fed, because it's sort of a branch of government, but it's not because the president can't fire the Fed chair, and the Fed doesn't really answer to anyone to the extent of, hey, we're going to print money out of thin air. And read The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's all a mess. And this is the scam. You call Bitcoin a scam. The dollar is the scam. So ultimately what happened is recently, and this is history making, it should have been all over the news, but they didn't want to talk about it on the news. You can find it because it would have freaked the market. And more importantly, would have made people ask about, well, where does this money thing come from? So the Fed stepped in and bought these treasuries. Okay, what has this got to do with stablecoins? Okay, what's fascinating about stablecoins, Tether, as an example, is sitting on this massive honeypot of liquid cash. And America wants to sell their treasuries. So what's so fascinating, Martin, is that in the past, a stablecoin was backed by a dollar. But now, because the stablecoins have become so big and the US is trying to sell its bonds and no one wants to buy its bonds, but the stablecoin is saying, well, hang on, if you accept your treasury as a backing of this stablecoin I've got, we'll buy the bonds off you. And America's gone, you beauty, we'll take that deal. Hey, USDT, Tether, you give us your $1 billion, give us your $500 billion, and we'll give you this IOU. And we'll, under the Genius Act, acknowledge that this stablecoin has value. We'll acknowledge that you're a legitimate company, and we'll acknowledge also that your stablecoin isn't backed by a dollar, but it's backed by a treasury note. And so now Everyone wins in this example because the United States of America gets to sell its IOUs to the real market. The real market being, ironically, crypto. Crypto and the stablecoins are saying, all right, we'll buy you billions of dollars worth of treasuries as long as, well, not as long as you made the offer and you acknowledge under the Genius Act and all of the crypto acts that you're making that instead of backing this stablecoin with a dollar, we're going to back this stablecoin with a treasury. So, what does it mean, Martin? It means that so fascinatingly, in the past, a stablecoin was backed by a dollar, but now it's the opposite. Now the dollar is backed by a stablecoin. My mind-shattering stuff.
Yeah, but it also just shows you that the pyramid of sand continues to build, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It's just one big Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I close off with this. To everyone who's holding a stable coin, and you understand this, Martin, because we've said it many times, what's the anchor? What's the peg? And we've discussed this at length on my channel. And you say, well, a stable coin's backed by a dollar. And you say, well, what's a dollar backed by? Well, nothing. But now they're going to say, well, now a stable coin is backed by, hang on, a dollar's backed by a stable coin, but a stable coin's backed by a dollar. So it's just literally one big circle of scam. Not that crypto's done anything wrong. What was happening in the past is that Tether was saying, "Hey, we're going to hold your liquid dollars. We honor the deal. We back the deal." But what's happened now is the government says no one's buying our treasuries, no one's buying our bonds. Where can we get some of that liquid cash? And Tether's like, we got billions. You want some billions? But if everyone out there is holding a stable coin, your stable coin continues to lose purchasing power.
Mm.
It's losing purchasing power because it's pegged to a dollar, which is pegged to nothing, or an IOU, or a stable coin, whichever way you want to look at it. It's all pegged to something that's linked to nothing, printed out of thin air with an unlimited supply. And once you understand that, you say, right, stablecoins have great utility. They're a good tool. As I mentioned, I can send money from me to you instantly. I can do it right now on a Tuesday night. I can do it at 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I don't need to worry for the banks to open. Fantastic. But guess what? I can do that with any cryptocurrency on the planet. I can do it with Bitcoin. I can do it with Pepe. I can do it with Dog with Hat. I can do it with XRP. I can do it with Ethereum. It's irrelevant. The market is still not ready for the volatility of crypto. The market is accepting the depreciation, the loss of purchasing power of the dollar. And so they're willing to buy into stable coins to move that money around and to at least hold their purchasing power pegged to something to an extent. They're not holding their purchasing power because the purchasing power is constantly going down. They're holding their nominal value. What's this thing worth? It's worth a dollar. Cool. It's worth a dollar. Now that dollar's constantly going down. But at least people psychologically, they're like, well, it's linked to not price go up and down, up and down, up and down. Ultimately, this big rant, I know it's a lot of talking tonight. There's so much to go through. That's what I'm saying. If you think you know Bitcoin, you don't. Because we as a society, we're still learning so much about what money is and what this technology can do. Ultimately, it comes down to this. Bitcoin is still the best performing asset in the world because it's the most scarce asset. Because no matter what America's doing in the background, they can't print more of it. They can print more IOUs, more treasuries, more bonds, more dollars. We can mine more gold out of the ground. We can make different stable coins, but there's a hard cap of 21 million Bitcoin. That's it.
So let me just come back to that article I quoted earlier on, right, which is the Financial Times opinion piece, right? Because this article specifically said, while the recently passed Genius Act is being marketed as a measure to make crypto safer with stable coins backed by US dollars, that won't make a volatile asset class any less volatile. Indeed, it may make the whole market more volatile. And therefore, the pro crypto legislation will not only cause the next financial crisis, but will further fuel political populism and unrest in the US. Is she right?
Um, she's playing with words. So there will absolutely be another financial crisis, not because of Bitcoin. It's like saying there's going to be another financial crisis because they found some gold. It's like, what? Or there's going to be another financial crisis because people like collecting Pokemon cards. The financial crisis isn't because of a hard sound, immutable, borderless censorship money. The financial crisis is because they keep printing money out of thin air. That's why the financial crisis is coming. I remind everyone that is why Bitcoin was born. Bitcoin was born as the antithesis, as the solution to the 2008 GFC. What went wrong? Printed too much money, too much leverage, overvalued homes, and the house of cards came crashing down. What she's done there, so she says these are not stable assets. First of all, we need to make the distinction between stable coins and Bitcoin. So what she's done there is she's merged two things together. A stable coin is a crypto, but Bitcoin is not a stable coin, and a stable coin is not Bitcoin. They are two completely different things. Completely different things. It's like saying a motorbike and a fast jet are both modes of transport. And it's like, well, true, they're both transport to one extent. One can deliver 500 pounders to the enemy, and another one can deliver someone's pizza to their house. They're both a form of transport. But don't try and tell me a moped is the same as an F-18 Super Hornet. Two completely different things. And she's merged both of them there. Now, the other thing is when it comes to, in that article, the financial crisis is absolutely coming. But this time, when we talk about volatility, most people think volatility is a bad word. If you want price performance, you want volatility. You want to think to any surfers out there, think of if you've got a calm ocean, it's not very volatile. There's nothing happening there. It's like, well, I can't go surfing today. But if you have a volatile ocean, particularly if it's predictable, you can ride 10-foot waves and have a great time. So volatility has been presented by the media as a dirty or a bad word. But investors who want performance, volatility is what you need for performance. Because if you don't have volatility, what are you going to earn? You're going to earn 2 points a year, 2% per year? Like, what's that going to give you? 2% doesn't beat the hurdle rate. And on that point, Martin, the hurdle rate now isn't gold. The hurdle rate isn't the yields. We can see that because no one's turning up for the yields for the 10 years, the 2 years, or the 5 years. The hurdle rate, my friend, is Bitcoin's growth. That's the new hurdle rate, not because I believe it, not because I say it, but because it's the truth of the market. The whole market has realized if you're not outperforming Bitcoin, which is now the new hurdle rate, bonds used to be the hurdle rate. If I can't get better than 4% on a 10-year, I'm not really interested. Why? Because it's a US 10 years and it's as sure as the United States government. I'm going to put it into those bonds. Well, now if you look at Bitcoin, we're going up to 50% per annum. On a bad year, let's go 20% per annum. If you can't beat that hurdle rate, you're not going to invest into it. And that's why all the JP Morgans, all the nations, all the governments, all the political leaders, they're like, I can't beat that hurdle rate. I'm going to go into Bitcoin. So the summary of that article is she's merged two different technologies together. She suggested that volatility is bad. She's going to blame the next financial crisis on crypto. I remind everyone the Great Depression in the 30s happened before internet was here. I remind everyone the 2008 global financial crisis occurred before Bitcoin white paper was even conceptualized. So isn't it funny now? It's like, okay, well, the next financial crisis, it's Bitcoin's fault. It's always Bitcoin's fault. It's always Trump, Putin, or Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not going to be the cause of the next financial crisis. It's going to be the savior of the next financial crisis. Fiat is collapsing. The dollar is done. All fiats always fail. That is a fact. We are operating in market failure. The natural state of a market, a free market, is deflationary. We are not operating in a free market because it's inflationary. We're in an inflationary market, not because of evil white men operating in a cave to put up prices. We are operating in an inflationary market because they keep printing money. The antithesis is a hard-sounding, immutable, borderless, censorship-resistant money of Bitcoin.
Yes. Repeat ad infinitum because it's so important, right? And just on that, there was another article from another Financial Times piece that I think is worth just exploring briefly. So this is actually stating the obvious. Bitcoin will go up if more people buy Bitcoin and won't if they don't, said Citi. A Bitcoin is worth what the next person will pay for it. The same could said lots of assets. I'm interested in this as a sort of a philosophical point of view. So the point is here that, this is a new report on how to value digital tokens, right? And the crux of the analysis is that the price of Bitcoin is dependent on how many people want to buy Bitcoin. And they actually show this sort of model where you can go in three directions based on the number of people who want to buy it. And they sort of looked at earlier modeling from electricity, but this is about market. So the market is about how many more people want to buy Bitcoin. And I guess you could say for other currencies too. So is it really about just more people want it, and as more people want it, it's always going to go up?
I laugh at the comment because it's like, wow, look, this thing will have to go up because people want to buy it. Well, let's do a thought experiment. What if no one wants to buy houses tomorrow? What would happen to the house price? It would drop. What if no one wanted to buy gold tomorrow? The price would drop. So this concept of supply and demand to say, oh no, it's different in Bitcoin. It's like, no, Bitcoin is the essence of the free market. So for a shock piece to come out and say, oh no, this is horrible. Bitcoin's operating in the rules of the free market. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, if everyone's going to dump it and no one wants to buy it, the price will go down. It's like, do you know what supply and demand means, brother? And it's like, no, 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 but it's different for Bitcoin because it's only what the next person is willing to pay for it. You mean, and I say, you mean like a house or a car or a Pokemon card or a block of gold or a Picasso? So that nonsense cancels itself out. But here's the difference. So we understand now the laws of the free market, supply and demand, where the supply curve intersects with the demand curve. That is called price equilibrium. Why is Bitcoin $118,000? Because that's what the market's willing to pay for it. Not because I say it, not because you say it, not because that writer says it, but because that's what the free market says. I am willing to pay 118,000 US dollars at time of recording for a Bitcoin because that's what it's worth. I'm not going to sell it for less. You're not going to buy it for more. That's where price equilibrium occurs. Okay, so we now have established through this genius article, and I just am cynical here because you see it all the time. Schiff says it all the time. Well, it's only what the next fool is willing to pay for it. Well, isn't that the same for gold, mate? If no one wants to buy your yellow rock, what's going to happen? Oh, no, 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 we're above the free market. It's like, no, you're not. Everyone should be part of the free market. The people who are above the free market is those who steal from us by printing endless money. But what I can guarantee, what I can guarantee is that the dollar will constantly go down in purchasing power. Fact. I've got over half a century of data. In fact, if you go back through millennia, I can show you that all fiat always loses its purchasing power. No matter what the government does, no matter how many armies they throw at it, no matter how much confiscation they create, no matter how much they put up the interest rates, no matter what they do, all fiat fails, all fiat loses its purchasing power. Okay, but let's say, for argument's sake, no one's buying or selling Bitcoin. I'm not going to sell it, you're not going to buy it. The price doesn't drop. The price just sits steady. The bigger the market, if there's no movement in the markets, if there is zero volatility, the price just sits flat. Oh dear, Bitcoin's sitting at $118,000. It's like, okay, well, it's now just stabilized. So they're upset that when it's moving up, they get angry when it goes down because it's now a cheaper buying opportunity. They're angry when it adheres to the free market of price equilibrium. But extending on this further, it's becoming more and more scarce for this reason. There's 21 million Bitcoins that will only ever exist. There's 21 million as a maximum supply. Circulating supply is about 19.8 million. I'd have to look it up at time of recording. 19.8 million circulating supply. But here's the thing. We've lost about 6 million. We forecast we've lost about 6 million. You can't recover it. You can't go to a bank and say, Mr. Bank, can I please have another Bitcoin? Excuse me, Mr. Bitcoin company, can I have a refund of my Bitcoin? No, no, no. It's like a piece of gold. If you throw a block of gold into the ocean, you can't go to the gold CEO and say, excuse me, Mr. CEO Gold, I've lost a block of gold. Can you give it back to me? So ultimately what's happening, Martin, is Bitcoin is becoming more and more scarce and the demand is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Now back to the rules of the free market. If supply is becoming more scarce and demand is becoming more high, price goes up. So long way of saying that anyone who doesn't buy anything, whether it's a house, a car, a piece of gold, or Picasso, if no one wants to buy it, then the price is going to stabilize. But if everyone's trying to sell it and no one wants to buy it, then the price is going to drop. But if it's the opposite, what we're seeing now, and we've seen for 16 years, the price is getting bigger and bigger and bigger because the supply, the available supply to people out there is becoming scarcer and scarcer and scarcer, and the demand is becoming higher and higher and higher.
And just continuing the thought process here, we've touched on Bitcoin, of course, quite significantly, but of course there are altcoins too, and there are some shenanigans happening around a couple of them, as well as XRP and Ether are probably worth just referring to briefly.
Okay, so there's over 2 million cryptocurrencies out there, and people say, "Well, hang on a second. If there's a crypto, if there's 2 million cryptocurrencies, then they're all worth nothing." And I say, "Well, how many businesses are there? How many websites are there?" I think there's over 13 billion websites in the world. And so, well, all websites must be worth nothing because there's 13 billion, and I can make a website tomorrow. It's like, well, no, as anything in nature or the free market, something bubbles to the surface. So in business, what's the biggest business in the world? Well, the biggest business in the world at time of recording is Nvidia by market cap. Then you've got Apple and Microsoft. Not because I say so, but that's because what the market wants. The market wants those products. What's the biggest website in the world? Well, Google, Amazon, it depends what day of the week you're looking at it. So that everything bubbles to the surface. In any market, the winner will bubble to the surface. Okay, so now we go over to the crypto markets. There's 2 million cryptocurrencies, just as there's billions of websites and millions, if not billions, of companies. Most companies in the world fail. Most cryptocurrencies in the world are going to fail. But again, just to cancel it out, because people say, well, hang on, if I can make a cryptocurrency, anyone can do it. And I say, yeah, of course. Anyone can make a business. That doesn't mean you're going to be a billionaire. It doesn't mean you're going to make a lot of money. You've got to make a good business. Anyone can make a website. It doesn't mean everyone's going to go see your website. It's got to be good. Anyone can make a YouTube channel. It doesn't mean it's going to be good. You've got to put out a good product. So naturally now we have three industry leaders in crypto. We have Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. They are the three leaders. Now, there's still a lot of really good competitors out there, but it's not what I think, it's what the market thinks. If the market wants Bitcoin as number one, which it is and has, it's got 60% dominance of the $4 trillion in crypto. The market loves Bitcoin. I'm going to break it down very simply. Bitcoin, in the simplest terms, I'm oversimplifying this. Where people go wrong in crypto is they get too tribal. They treat crypto as if it's their wife, their girlfriend, their footy team, their husband, their kid. It's none of that. It is a tool, it is an asset, it is a technology. The number one in the world is Bitcoin, not because I say it, but because the market says it. It has a huge dominance. 60% of the $4 trillion in crypto is in Bitcoin. About a $2 trillion lower than that is Ethereum. And then below that is XRP. To oversimplify it, this is how it is. Bitcoin is the digital gold. Ethereum is the digital oil. And XRP, if adopted, is the new Swift network. It's that simple. So what I do as an investor, I say, well, look, what's going to win? And I thought, well, I diversify my holdings. Some people say, no, put all your eggs in one basket and watch the basket closely. That's cool. If you want to do that, go for it. But I'm making a lot of money in these markets by saying, well, what's moving quickly? Where can I get the volatility? Because I like volatility. So what I do is I have Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. They are my main holdings. They are my blue chip shares. They XRP has done very well over the last year, but it hasn't done very well over the last 8 years. Ethereum has done very well over the last several years, but not so well over the last year. Bitcoin is just the up and to the right, the digital gold that just constantly goes up and to the right. But Adam, it pulls back. All markets pull back. Everything goes up and down and vibrates, if you will. Bitcoin is the Mac Daddy, up and to the right, the maximum blue chip share. Ethereum, the digital oil, the big institutions are using it. XRP, if adopted, I've been talking about it for years, will be used by the banks around the world. If the banks don't go it alone, don't use their own stablecoin and don't use another technology. XRP Army will tell you, no, it's absolutely certain it's going to be XRP. You wait and see. It's ISO 20022 compliant. But I say, well, hang on, there are many ISO compliant coins. Banks have the permission to make their own stable coins. Banks like to make their own technology. They like to keep technology in-house. But because I don't get emotional about it, I just like, well, I'll just hedge my bets. Now we look at the other 2 million cryptocurrencies. Those that are competing with Bitcoin, those that are competing with Ethereum, those that are competing with XRP, those that are just a meme coin. What's a meme coin? It's just a picture of a dog with a hat on his head, a frog with his hand on his chin. Anyone can make a meme coin. I made a meme coin, which I didn't publish. That was a picture of my dog. It was called Dino Dog Coin. It's like I can make a website. If the market wants to buy Dino Dog Coin, I didn't publish it because I didn't want to compromise my brand. But that's not my brand. My brand is not meme coins and pumping coins. My brand is seeking the truth and trying to grab people out or drag people nicely out of the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of humanity, which is the dollar. I'm trying to say, hey, that's the problem. This is the solution. So ultimately, I would say this. There are 2 million cryptocurrencies, 98, probably 99% of them going to zero. That doesn't mean crypto is a scam. It just means it's the free market. The lead industry leaders are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. Not because I say so, but because I've got over a decade of data that can prove it. The blue chip shares of Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP will probably give you a good run in my three coin theory. Those are the three coins I talk about. But when you want to make some big money, big risk, but big money, you play in what's called the crypto casino. There's a lot of great technology out there, exceptional technology, just as there's a lot of businesses that have some really good technology. Just because there's good technology and a good use case doesn't mean it will succeed. That's not my rule, that's the market's rule. You can have a really good company, but it just doesn't work. Equally, you can have a really good cryptocurrency and it just doesn't work. Ironically, it can go the other way. You can make a really stupid cryptocurrency, like Dogecoin as an example, silly by definition of its own founders. They said, this is just a joke coin. We don't even care about this coin. And that coin is worth more than the Ford Motor Company Earth. A picture of a dog as a cryptocurrency that has an unlimited supply, its market cap is worth more than all the engineering, all the factories, all the development of the Ford Motor Company Earth. People get angry at that. I get excited by it. I say, wow, money markets move quickly and they are free. Long way of saying, do your own research. All investments come with risk, and make sure you don't fall for a narrative of like, this is the better Bitcoin, this is the better Ethereum. The banks are definitely going to use XRP. In crypto, my friend, anything can happen.
And just to remind everybody, it's completely unregulated at the moment in Australia. So there are people making excessive claims. I'll make more of a statement than that. Now, last thing to talk about tonight: the digital euro is looming. It was referred to quite recently when the ECB was talking. And of course, we've got central bank digital currencies in a few other places being experimented with. And so there is this sort of contention in my mind between the old world, which is effectively, as we've said, this inflationary world, printing more and more, and the digital version of that. And I think central bank digital currency is the next logical extension of that, which can include things like control of the money, the timeout of the value of the money over time, the linking of transactions to the individual that's involved in it, or indeed money being sent by central banks directly to people's wallets or not, depending on if you do the right thing or not. So to my mind, the central bank digital currency route is about control, and it's about effectively reinforcing this current environment that we've been describing this evening. So what's your view with regard to the contention between the central bank digital currency future and the crypto Bitcoin future?
Great question. So essentially, as you mentioned, a CBDC, to put it even simpler, it's just fiat with more controls and more benefits, not for us, but for the government. So just as they can print money out of thin air as they do now, a CBDC takes out the middleman. It makes it a central bank digital currency where you don't need the commercial banks. You can issue it directly from the central bank to my wallet and to your wallet. And on the surface says, well, that's really good. No. What they can do at any time is they can turn off your money. They can delete your money, burn your money. They can put geographical boundaries on it. Think of if we had another COVID-19 lockdown and you're in Brisbane and you want to cross the border, Queensland, and you want to cross the border into New South Wales. Well, in a CBDC, they can put a geographical boundary on it and say, no, you're not going to spend that money. If the inflation's too hot, they've printed too much CBDCs, they can just burn it out of your wallet. And we use the term burn, which is just they take your currency and they burn it. So what's good in America is that they've put forward a law saying, no, we are the land of the free. CBDCs are against what we're doing. But the reality is, we're already using digital money now. We're already using a digital fiat because the majority of fiat in the world is digital anyway. So anyone who says, oh, we can't have digital money, you're already using digital. Fiat, a CBDC is just a digital fiat on steroids. It makes it even worse for us and even better for the governments. So just quickly on stablecoins, there is a belief, a theory out there, and I tend to lean towards this theory as well. Part of the reason why they want to get stablecoins out there to everyone is because of a flick of a switch. Flick that stablecoin that you thought was just a stablecoin linked to a dollar. Congratulations, it's now a CBDC. That's the danger of stablecoins, beyond them being diluted through money printing because it's linked to a dollar that's printed without limit. a stable coin could be, in theory, flicked to a CBDC. And some believe it's just a theory, but I think it's a valid theory that part of the reason of why they want to really push for stable coins in the United States is one, as I described, it props up the demand on the dollar through stablecoin companies buying treasuries from the government, therefore putting a demand on the dollar and propping it up. But equally, it's a Trojan horse, my friend, where they get stablecoins into all of your wallets, all of your holdings, and the flick of the switch, haha, you're now a CBDC. We can monitor you, block you, seize your money. We can put geographical boundaries on it. We can do whatever we want with it. So ultimately, what does it come down to? It all leads back to Bitcoin. Why? Because Bitcoin is the antithesis to fiat, the antithesis to stablecoins linked to fiat, and the antithesis to CBDCs. So now it's at the point it's like, hey, if you want to tinker around with the biggest scam in the history of humanity of fiat and stablecoins and CBDCs, good luck. Now, again, stablecoins have a utility, and I use stablecoins for now. But in the big picture, if you don't want to be part of that dilution, part of that control, part of that theft, part of that inflation, come over to the real market, the free market, the true market, a market that operates in a state of deflation, where your purchasing power goes up because the supply is set. Bitcoin is the answer.
Well, we're coming towards the end of the show, and I wanted to share with you one last meme here. Adam, I don't know whether you've seen this, but this actually has been doing the rounds. Didn't amass generational wealth before the singularity. Now, the singularity that they're talking about here is where AI effectively gets more intelligent than humans. We might be quite close to that, which I think we could also apply also to the digital world as well, and particularly crypto. But I guess, thinking about the future, we are, I think, at a bit of a determinant point here as to which way we're going to end up, right? Because there is a one future which effectively is where the reinforcing of the fiat world continues, and central bank digital currencies are part of that. And then you've got this alternative route that you've been articulating this evening, which is effectively a different way of thinking about money and about wealth. And I suppose the question for, as we come to the end is, what do we do? Do we simply sort of straddle, do a bit of this, bit of that, and see where it goes? Or is it time to take a bit more of a stance?
Every technological advancement has been faced with fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So aeroplanes would fall out of the sky. Cars had too much smoke coming out of the back. The computers, I don't need, you only need them in data centers. Every single time humanity gets some type of technology, those who stand to lose from it will put in fear and uncertainty and doubt into the community. As I mentioned before, the natural state of a free market is deflationary. Why? Because things become more efficient. Go an extreme example first. Artificial intelligence is going to be Terminator 2, and the whole world's going to end, and all the robots are going to take over. Cool. So that's one theory. Let's run away and unplug it and just go back to plowing the fields. And some people do go to the Amish. They do it that way. Now we look at humanity. Humanity is constantly progressing, and every tool that we get makes things more efficient for us. The reality is that if we adopt a hard, sound, immutable, open, borderless, censorship-resistant money and embrace the technology of artificial intelligence, the standard of your life will improve. Just as when the washing machine was created, the standard of your life improved. The car was created, the standard of your life improved. Heater, electricity, computers. Every piece of technology that we get improves the standard of our life. Sure, we might have too much screen time. We might get into car accidents. I got it. But ultimately, we accept those risks, and we understand that as a society, as humanity, this technology progresses further. So long as the money is hard, artificial intelligence, the relationship between artificial intelligence and crypto and life will be on the up and up. The reasons why the fearmongers don't want you to use artificial intelligence is because it improves your life. It enables you to have more freedom through a harder money that has more purchasing power, and a workforce of artificial intelligence that can provide more work for you. We can do more with the computer. We can do more with the internet. We can do more with aeroplanes. We can do more with artificial intelligence. But so long as the money is broken, you will stay poor. It doesn't matter what technological advancement we have. So long as the money is broken, the layer one, we're all screwed. Because again, and I make no apology for repeating this, the natural state of the free market is deflationary. Yet for our entire life, the state of the unfree market has been inflationary despite the technological advancements. Therefore, I put it to everyone, none of us have ever been free because we have never ever been in the state of the free market. The reason why we haven't been in the natural state of the free market is because we've had a corrupt money. Artificial intelligence and a hard, sound, open, borderless, censorship resistant, neutral money will improve all of our lives, except for those right at the very top, the 0.001%, who have been milking us all dry and laughing at us as we all fight over colors and genders and religions and wars and pulling all of these strings while we just work one job, two jobs, three jobs, can't have kids, can't afford the house. Why is it that way? We're becoming smarter. We have better technology. The last piece of the puzzle, Martin, is we need a better money. And we have the better money now. Embrace the money, embrace the artificial intelligence, and live a better quality life.
Yeah, the Matrix is a good parable. And just on the poll, which I've closed now, the best future for money and us came out at 33%. A complete Ponzi scam, 31%. One among money forms ahead, 25%, and to be overtaken by central bank digital currency, 9%. And that's based on 138 votes. So interesting move during the conversation.
Yeah, so what did Bitcoin come out as?
So it ended at 33.
Cool.
So it's slid down slid slightly.
Just to everyone who believes Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme, I wish you well. The biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of humanity is not an open money. It is fiat. I say that as a friend. I know it upsets some people. It's very difficult to come to terms with. You have been scammed your whole life. Bitcoin is not the scam. The dollar is the scam. Once you make the distinction, you're free. If you don't make that distinction, have fun staying poor.
Adam, thank you so much. If people want to learn more, where should they go?
Well, join me on my channel, Adam Stokes. Read my book, 28 Pro Trader Tips, The Art of Trading. Follow me on X at Adam_Stokesy. Or if you want to do anything crypto safely, buy crypto, learn about crypto, store crypto, do your crypto taxes, head over to my website, www.thecrypto.land.
Adam, thank you very much. As always, great fun and some really, really important points being made here and in the chat as well. And I appreciate your coming on as normal. And somebody said the $50 is now worth 20 through the show.
We've got consensus on that.
Exactly right. Thank you. I'll look forward to having you back on sometime down the track as we continue to talk about all of these interesting alternative futures. But folks, there's some really important points here that we've covered today about what makes money money. What is the role of the central bank? What are governments doing? Why is inflation the way it is? And what does it all mean for the dollar in our pocket or the crypto on our wallet? So very important conversation. Adam, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you back on again.
Thank you, Martin. You inspire me. Cheers.
Cheers. So there we go, folks. Well, I hope you found that stimulating. I certainly did. And just to say that next week, we're going to have Damien Klassen on and we're going to go through the latest markets movements and talk about the peaks in the market that we've been seeing and what it means ahead. The dogs are still, well and a bit dogs. So Luna's not moved. Meteor's sort of shifted around. So she's now over here, which I can just about get most of her before you see me. There you go. So there we go. The dogs are here. And I want to say thank you for spending some time with us this evening. Really appreciate it. And all the questions, all the comments. And I'll look forward to seeing you in next week's show. Check out the other shows over the week. I had Joe Wilkes on. Those of you who know Joe from some years ago, he was back on over the weekend to have another conversation with him next week. And we covered a few issues there. And I've been making a few other shows. Every day there's a new show, so check it out. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. I look forward to seeing you next time. This is Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics signing off. Take care.